Welcome to College Football Monday. I'm your host, Pete B, and I've got Sam Jesse here. This is our live show, our national show on the Sons of Saturday channel, brought to you by Jack and Coke. This show covers everything that goes on in college football every weekend, including a dose of what the Hokies are up to, although we didn't play. And Sam, I have to admit, the bye week was nice.
It was awesome. I enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, it was so many good games. And we didn't have to be sad or mad or upset or even happy. We just got to root for whatever teams we picked to win against the spread and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and it was a really, I think, close, hard-fought week. Like there were not a lot of blowout games. Texas, Oklahoma. We'll get into that. Wearing the Hook 'em Horn shirt today, but Ohio State, Oregon was a classic, an absolute classic. Florida, Tennessee was close. Even Georgia, Mississippi State was like a 10-point game for most of that. So it's a really awesome Saturday.
I was calling it, or what I'm going to call it tonight, is to the brink Saturday, because so many teams eked out important W's. But Sam, before we get into all of it, could you give us a cheers?
Dude, my cheers is to the bye week, because that was awesome. Just sitting on our couch. I was at a brewery for most of the day, hanging out. We had some games on. That was awesome. That's the way to go. Cheers. Not having to worry about the Hokies. Cheers. No beer tonight, doctor's orders, but we'll be back for Thursday Night Football.
Nice. I am having a brewski. And just so you guys know, the Two Deep show is already in your feeds. We did another Sunday night recording because of the Thursday night game, and it has thrown off our schedule, Sam. I want to get back on this regular routine next week, maybe. But yeah, that's there. Make sure you give it a listen. We had AJ Black from Locked On BC and Eagle Insider 247 site, and he was great. He really awesome. Provided some really good information on the Eagles. We both kind of lamented parts of our team and hyped up other parts of our team. So it was fun. Give it a listen. It's on.
Few people are as knowledgeable and passionate about Boston College athletics as AJ is.
He records every weekday.
Yeah, and he does he does half of his recording is about their hockey team and stuff like that.
Oh, that's funny. So they do have a good hockey team.
Very good.
All right, so we're going to get into this past weekend's action. We're going to do our stock up and stock down, and we're going to do our playoff predictions. We do have some changes there. Make sure to hop in the chat and like the video, subscribe, please. That very much helps us out. So to the brink. That's what I'm calling it. This past Saturday, Bama, Tennessee, Penn State, LSU, Illinois, Kansas State, all of them got pushed to that brink, but came away with W's. Also, Sam, did you notice in the AP poll, Army and Navy are both ranked now?
I love it. I'm a little bit disappointed that the Army-Navy game won't really matter in terms of the playoff. Like it'll already be decided.
Will it though?
Excuse me. Yeah, because I believe it'll come out. The playoff will come out Sunday, and then they play the next Saturday.
In years past, when they were going to announce the New Year's Six, when these teams were good, there were talks that like the New Year's Six will wait until after Army Navy to make the announcement. You might have to.
Totally wrong.
You might have to. Like, I just don't think. Of course, they want to get those announcements out, but like if those two teams are both undefeated, like I don't know how you can't wait. So we're all going to find out together, but it's very cool that they're undefeated. And
if both of those teams go undefeated throughout the rest of the year, screw it, put them both in. Yeah. Like who cares at that point?
Yeah, that would be crazy. I want to actually ask you a question pertaining to the service academies and the at-large bid a little bit later. Also, this weekend, one of Sam's favorites, Iowa State, went to 6-0. My Big 12 choice for the last couple of weeks, BYU, moved to 6-0. And Pitt of the ACC is 6-0.
Somehow, some way, Pitt keeps winning games. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy game we'll get to when we get to our ACC stuff. But let's go to Oregon and Ohio State. You said it was a classic. 32-31. The Ducks prevail in prime time. Great game. Both QBs played really well. The last play and maybe even the last drive notwithstanding, because I think Howard was a little shaky at the end, but it was a fantastic game by both quarterbacks, I thought.
Yeah, I thought Will Howard was damn near perfect for most of that game. I mean, he was managing the offense, avoiding sacks, really accurate. And then I thought, it's just unfortunate. And I was rooting for Oregon. I have an Oregon national title future. I had Oregon money line. I was all addicted to Quack that night. But dude, I kind of feel bad that it ended like that, but also I don't think he had much of a choice. Like once he did that first hitch and nobody was open, that was the ball game. Like they weren't going to have enough time. Even if he just threw the ball out of bounds immediately, first off, it would have been intentional grounding. So he had to throw at someone. And then second, I don't think they would have had enough time to even call the timeout after that anyways. So I think after he did that first hitch, the game was pretty much over unless he threw it in the end zone.
Was he past the first down marker though when he went down? I'm trying to remember.
No, because it was like 3rd and 20.
It was long, yeah. Okay, so yeah, he was in a tough spot there. So basically, he had to just keep running and maybe do the lateral thing.
But they weren't set up for the lateral. Everyone was on the sideline.
Yeah, so he needed to get rid of it. Is what he needed to do. Is just throw it up and hope somebody got under it. But I thought there was actually 1 second left. There's a couple stills where like it looks like he's down, but you're right. Like I guess that wouldn't have mattered.
It doesn't matter. It's you have to be able to like call the timeout and blow the whistle. And no one signaled for timeout until well after 0. Yeah. And I'm a little bit, a couple things on that last drive. First off, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't try to just do like a 5-yard out route and say like, okay, we got 5 yards in the penalty. Let's get another 5 yards and kick a field goal. Mm-hmm. It looked like they tried to get a lot closer into field goal range. I'm a little bit surprised about that with only 6 seconds left. And then also, do you think Oregon had 12 men on the field on purpose?
I was going to ask you that because I think they did.
I hope they did because that's diabolical. Like that's really a different level. That's art of war.
For the listeners, what happened was as Ohio State has 11 seconds left or whatever, Oregon runs a 12th man out there to defend the long pass. They get called for it and they lose 5 yards, but it took 4 or 5 seconds off the clock. And so that was a huge advantage because it basically left 1 play left.
Mm-hmm. And there was a little bit of confusion on their sidelines before that play. And I think the broadcast even mentioned it. So I don't think it was on purpose totally. But if it was on purpose, why would you stop at 12?
Well,
because you just have like 14 out there.
Because then you're making it so obvious that you're doing it for time purposes. I don't know. Like
what does it matter? It's a 5-yard penalty if you have 20 players out there, if you have 12 players out there. That is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, then the other idea of if it was on purpose, why wouldn't he just keep doing it? Do it again and again. Because they weren't that close for a field goal.
The game can't end on a defensive penalty.
Yeah. So they're going to get a play.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you would get a unsportsmanlike conduct, excuse me.
I think you
or
would.
A delay of game.
I think
if you did it multiple times.
Anyway, well, let's talk about Gabriel real quick. 373 total yards, 3 touchdowns for Dylan Gabriel, 10 yards per attempt. This was his best game by far as a Duck. One of his best games in his career.
Yeah.
And Evan Stewart went off in this game, the wide receiver for Oregon, 149 yards. They got a 115 from Jordan James. Like both offenses were humming because Will Howard put up 326 himself and 3 touchdowns. Travion Henderson had the long run. Jeremiah Smith continues to be super impressive for a freshman. Just a very high level football game that came right down to the end. This game, I think it changes my opinion of Oregon, but not of Ohio State. Like I still think Ohio State is good. They played this game on the road and they lost by 1 point.
And how much points did Oregon leave on the field? I mean, they missed an extra point. They failed going for 2. They had a 4th down inside their own 5 and they didn't get it and turn the ball over. And then they had like a first and goal they had a 2nd and goal from the 3 and weren't able to get a touchdown after that and had to kick the field goal to go up 32-31. So like Oregon left a lot of points on the board in this game. And I think someone who has been backing the Ducks this year, that almost makes it more impressive because you're like, man, this team is still leaving points out on the board. I mean, they threw 2 red zone interceptions, 2 in zone interceptions against Michigan State. Against Boise State, they had some bad turnovers.
The other side of that, though, is Sam, like, is that going to bite them at some point? Because they do make mistakes.
I mean, it almost lost them this game.
Right.
So I think that defense too was, I thought, really impressive in this scenario. Like,
all right, let me ask you this. 4 weeks down the road, we could even do next week. It's a hypothetical. They play on a neutral field. Who are you taking in that game? Because I know were we both on Ohio State to win the game?
I was on Oregon.
Oh, were you really? To win outright?
Yeah, I had an Oregon money line.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. I would take Ohio State neutral field. I think this is that's as 50-50 of a game as you can get.
Yeah.
And I think that's one, it's the sign of they're both really good teams, but also, I think Ohio State might game plan defensively a little bit differently. I think they were a bit, I think they came in a little bit egotistical, a little bit thinking that they could just man up Oregon's guys on the outside, thinking that they were completely dominant. And they weren't. Like, everyone came into this game talking about Ohio State has tons of NFL talent everywhere, most expensive roster of all time, national champion favorite. They're going to win. They're going to win. I mean, the Cover 3 podcast even was making jokes about themselves, about how they were sounding like an Ohio State podcast.
Yeah.
And you watch that field, and you could not tell me that Ohio State was more talented or more NFL ready than Oregon was. Like, at no position.
I don't think Ohio State, and we got a comment up here from Mike Holmes, didn't expect OSU to struggle against the run. And I think one of the reasons for that, and the reason that they didn't win the game, is because they hadn't been tested the way Oregon had been tested. And not like Oregon played a murderer's row, but that game against Boise State was a tough, down to the wire game, and they got the win. And they were at home. And so I think Ohio State, with a little bit more seasoning, like, I don't expect Ohio State to lose another regular season game. I think they're going to go undefeated. I think they're going to beat Penn State somewhat easily when they play. And we can talk about Penn State shortly. But then it'll come down to the championship game, and they might get Oregon again on a neutral field, or they might get Penn State. Who knows? But I think the Buckeyes are really good, and this was just it was an awesome game, really fun. Let's move to Red River. Unless are you good? Can we move on?
I'm good. I think
we got a lot of stuff to get to.
Tons of games.
We're also hoping to host a guest a little bit later in the show to talk about the LSU game. But Texas dominated Oklahoma 34-3. I thought the magic of the rivalry and the Sooners, like, I thought they would cover because of just the rivalry aspect. On paper, the matchup wasn't good. Like, the Sooners cannot score versus good defenses.
Yeah, I don't even know if they can score against bad defenses. Like, Houston shut them down for a bit. It's almost shocking. Like, it's jarring to see an Oklahoma offense not great. Right. We're just so not used to it. And if you look at what they have on the offensive line now, they have a ton of injuries. They just don't look very big. They don't look very fast on the outside. Quarterback's a major question mark. I don't know if Brent Venables has built this team the way that it needs to be built for them to be what Oklahoma should be, which is top 10, top 5 in the country. They do have a ton of injuries, though. Maybe they get a little bit better over the next few weeks, but that was not a fair matchup. I mean, Texas could have scored 50. Like, Texas ran the ball most of that second half.
Yeah. The O-line for Oklahoma is just overmatched, especially in a matchup like this. And it showed 5 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. For the Longhorns, Hawkins was just 19 of 30, 148 yards. We're under 5 yards per attempt for the quarterback of Oklahoma, a 40 QBR. Quinn Ewers was back, looked pretty good, not amazing, but we know how good the Oklahoma defense is. And I even said during the game, like, this is one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. But, like, they can only do so much when your offense just can't put anything on the board.
Yeah, and good offense is going to beat good defense. And you saw that today. Quinn Ewers had a little bit of an accuracy issue in this game. That first throw, like, he had a wide open wide receiver and just airmailed the ball over him and an easy interception. You kind of started thinking, rivalry game magic. Here it goes. Not the case. They settled in really well. They're down to, like, their 4th string running back in some of these formations, and it's still just talent after talent. Their wide receiver room is so deep. Their offensive line is sturdy, and their defense is really, really good. Not enough people are talking about how good the Texas defense is. I think it's better than last year's. I'll ask you this. After seeing Ohio State lose, does Texas become one of the top 3 favorites for the Natty right now?
Yeah. I mean, they're the best team in the country, unquestionably, in my mind. Like, I know they're number one in the AP poll, but you look at all the teams in the SEC, which are obviously vying for that top spot, they all have major flaws. And we're going to get into some of the stuff like Bama. We don't know what we're going to get from Bama week in and week out right now. Georgia struggled in their game this past weekend. Texas, while not having played, they went up to Michigan and they won. But that since then, it doesn't look quite as impressive because Michigan just isn't that great and everybody knows it. But they have dominated everybody. Yeah. So like it's not just who they're playing, it's the way they're beating them. And every other team, even Tennessee, they struggled this weekend. Like there's a lot of teams that we thought are going to the playoff or in there or whatever. Penn State, yeah, they're undefeated and they're number 3 right now, ahead of Ohio State. They barely won against a 3-3 now USC team. And it was a good win. And I want to talk about that one next. And maybe we'll go there. But I think Texas is the best team right now. And I do think they're the favorite for the Nats.
One quick thing about this, we brought up a stat how Oklahoma is one of the worst teams in creating explosive plays on offense in the country. In Texas, their defense was one of the best at avoiding explosive plays. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma had 0 explosive plays in this game. Wow. 0.
Yeah, that's tough. They're done. I mean, they have a bunch more of tough games. The Sooners do, and it's only their second loss. It feels like more, but they're gonna lose to good teams. Like they've lost to 2 pretty good teams, and they're gonna continue to lose to those teams.
If they get healthy, 8-4 wouldn't surprise me. If they get healthy,
sure,
I could see it, which is not good for
because the defense can carry them. Like
defense will carry them a bit more. Yeah.
All right, Penn State comes back to beat USC 33-30 in overtime. The Nittany Lions were down 20-6 at the half. Colin Cowherd got his nose in there, said people owed Lincoln Riley an apology. Not so fast, my friend. Aller threw 3 interceptions, but he still threw for 391 yards and 2 touchdowns. USC, in the early part of this game, I was feeling good about my USC plus 5.5 pick. They're moving the ball like crazy. Mm-hmm. Penn State looked confused and slow, and they really only had one option on offense. Well, that one option on offense, Warren, that didn't really change in the second half. They just got more and more production.
It feels like Penn State took USC's best shot and then just got right up off the mat. Mm-hmm. And that's really impressive to me. And I know Penn State's been a thorn in your side throughout this whole process. And I'll tell you though,
it's weird because I've had them in my playoffs, but I've been a doubter.
They're not at Oregon or Ohio State's level.
No,
they're not at Texas or Georgia or Bama's level. Like for me, they're much closer to what we're seeing from Iowa State, from Texas A&M, BYU. Like I think they're much more on that side of the playoff bracket, but they just find ways to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go 11-1. I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I wouldn't be either. I mean, we knew the schedule was favorable for them. This was a major speed bump to go to USC. And I thought the spot was good for USC. And I was pretty sure USC was going to win. And they did cover, but I thought they were going to win. And Penn State proved me wrong. And it's a good win. And the Warren thing is just bizarre. 17 catches and 224 yards for a tight end who's like 6'6". He even snapped the ball on his 1 touchdown catch, which was an annexation of Puerto Rico type play. Just absolutely awesome. So it was a cool game. It was a great comeback. I give Penn State a lot of credit. And now, like you said, Sam, it's Ohio State and then a very manageable everything else on their schedule.
Penn State had 9 yards per drop back. Wow. Like they can throw the ball. And I know people don't want to think that. There is a possibility
they can throw the ball to one player.
They can. And hey, that's all you need sometimes. I mean, there is a possibility that they were holding a lot back in the beginning of this season. I mean, they were playing Bowling Green. They were playing UCLA is not any good. Like there is a possibility that they were working with half of a playbook for the first few weeks of this season that they'll open it up.
Yeah. And they could, but this was everything they had and they still were, hey, it worked. If it kept working, I guess don't fix it. Keep throwing to Warren. what an outstanding performance. And they overcame a -2 turnover margin. But that's the thing about Aller. It's not like USC's defense is top notch. It's gotten a lot better, but he threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
If you do that against another Big Ten team, you're probably not going to get on the better side of that again.
No.
And so they got to be a little careful because I still don't think they're a great team. I don't know when their bye week is, if they've had it already, but like coming off of this win, they need to be a little careful. But it's all about the Ohio State game. But even if they lose that game, if they're 11-1, like you said, they're in the playoff.
I mean, I think Penn State's they would have to have an epic collapse to not be in the playoff. And we kind of knew that going into the season. So I do wonder, maybe this will be a good case study moving forward into 2025 and beyond, is when you have teams who are as talented and have the schedule that a Penn State does, or a Clemson does, if you look at Clemson's schedule, like, do those teams hold stuff back throughout the season and know, hey, even if we drop one, 10-2, 11-1 for sure gets us in? I mean, it could be worth it.
There was another team that they were talking about that on Cover 3. There was a team that was like holding stuff back potentially and then just showed out this weekend. But we're so far into the season now. Like I find that a little hard to believe. And, you know, with some of the way these teams have gotten, you know, picked off and losing to teams they shouldn't, like, you shouldn't really hold much back. You got to play hard every week.
Penn State did throw a touchdown pass on a double pass to the guy who snapped the ball. So, and Colton Necky is the guy that they brought in to, like, is it Colton Necky? Is that who they brought in? Am I thinking of something else?
The who are you talking about?
The Kansas offensive coordinator that Penn State brought in.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I can think of who it is.
People know who I'm talking about, I'm sure. Like, he runs a lot of weird motion and a lot of weird formations, and they haven't shown that yet. So I'm wondering if they have that in their bag.
Let's move to Bama surviving against South Carolina. This was a game that we were talking about in the chat heavily with Holmes, Mike Holmes, who's in the chat, with yourself and Rob Irby. And Mike's like, you know, I like South Carolina today. I think they're going to maybe pull this upset. And I was like, no chance in hell. After a game after they lose to Vandy, there is no way they're going to lose at home to Shane Beamer. And by God, did they try. they got up 14-0. I'm feeling good. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I expected. A typical Bama bounce back. And then for the next 40 minutes, South Carolina fought them tooth and nail. And they took a lead. And I was blown away at like what was the fans were like dumbfounded in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, you don't see that often. And I think, one, there are serious concerns about this Alabama team. And from what we have seen this year, outside of one quarter against Georgia, they have not looked like a national title team. Like, they had one quarter against Georgia. Other than that, they have not looked great. The defensive secondary is still not great. Mm-hmm. Jalen Milroe made a couple of pretty bad mistakes in this game. Credit to them. A lot of teams would have folded over. They did win the football game.
It felt like they were going to lose.
It felt like they were going to lose all the way up until they didn't. Mm-hmm. And
because even at the end, like, Sellers had more yards than Milroe in this game. More total yards. And Bama could not establish the run. And it really affected what they were trying to do. And at the end of the game, if you didn't watch, like, South Carolina missed a 2-point conversion to tie it. Like, because when Alabama went up 8, I'm like, okay, they got this. And they almost didn't have it even then. And so I think we're learning, Sam, that all the things we've become like muscle memory under Nick Saban, like, they're going to bounce back. They're going to be great. Those are not true anymore. You know, we're still learning about what this new Bama is going to be like.
I can't believe that. Mike, I know you're in the chat, and Mike Holmes is our football film analyst guy on SonsofSaturday.com. I hate when teams cut off half the field on a 2-point conversion. And so instead of making the defense have to cover the whole width of the field, they just cut it in half. And then now they're having like 3 wide receivers up against 5 defensive backs in a 10-yard rectangle. I don't understand why you do that. And I got to say, Virginia Tech, our Hokies, open next season with South Carolina. And there's the whole Shane Beamer playing his alma mater, his dad's school.
Yeah.
I think Shane Beamer will be the coach at South Carolina next year, but his seat is boiling hot because at some point you have to win these games. And they
Yeah.
just
That was a
can't.
big opportunity.
That was a big opportunity. And how many times have we said that for South Carolina?
Yeah. So anyway, great game. Another fantastic game. We got to move on. Florida took Tennessee to overtime. So South Carolina damn near took Bama to overtime. An unranked, having a terrible season, Florida took the hotshot Tennessee Volunteers from the first few weeks of the season to OT. Now, Florida lost 23-17, but I felt good about the Gators. I took the Gators. They were getting a couple touchdowns. I liked the money line play. Like, my retort to Mike was like, here's a real money line play. Let's take Florida. And like, they both, his pick and my pick, both good picks. Neither team could pull it off. But man, these top tier SEC teams, I'm starting to wonder what to think about Tennessee.
Yeah, they look to be a quarterback away.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I put out a tweet in August, and actually it might have been before August, to be honest with you, but I was going through all the preview magazines and I was like, why are we just penciling in Tennessee for a playoff spot? They lost a ton of starters. They have a tough schedule. They didn't beat anybody good last year until they played the corpse of Iowa in the bowl game. And they have a redshirt freshman quarterback playing who is getting Heisman hype for some reason. And I thought I was going to be dead wrong about Tennessee. Maybe some of those concerns were correct because they don't look as polished as that team with Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman looked. Like, they aren't where they were. And I wonder too, if there's enough film on Josh Heupel and his offense out there, that defenses are starting to get a little bit more comfortable on how to defend it.
Yeah. Cause this game was in Knoxville, right?
It wasn't. Yeah. I mean, Florida went into the Lions Den, Knoxville at night.
And it's a rivalry for sure. So there's some of the magic of that took place. I would have to agree. But Graham Mertz also tore his ACL in the game and had to leave. So like for Florida to get it to OT, and did they miss the field goal in the first round of OT?
I think so.
Because there were so many OT games. I'm trying to remember. But either way, Nico, the guy you're talking about, the redshirt freshman quarterback for Tennessee, his QBR was 17.5, Sam. He played a terrible game. And thank God for their running back, Sampson, because he kind of carried the day.
He's good.
But it was a sloppy defensive battle. 4 total turnovers in the game. 20 total tackles for loss in the game. So the offenses were really struggling. And I don't know what to make of the Volunteers, as I said. So the OU win, their best win, that's starting to look worse by the week. And so
looking great.
They may or may not be in my playoff. They were in my playoff last week, Sam. I don't know if they are this week.
They are one of the teams that I think they're going to be bubblicious in late November. Like, they're going to drop another one at some point, and they're going to be a really fun fan base to watch on Twitter.
Well, they got Bama coming up.
They got Bama coming up. Hell, they have a bunch of tough games. Like, none of these SEC games are easy.
No. Because if you play Kentucky or Vanderbilt, which those two teams squared off this weekend, and Vandy won. Like, neither of those teams are a pushover. We've seen Kentucky pull upsets, nearly upset Georgia as well. Vandy upset Bama. Like, outside of Mississippi State, who even played Georgia kind of tough this week, there are no walkovers in that league. Maybe Auburn. Maybe Auburn's the second worst team. Like,
Tennessee has Bama at home, Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home, at Georgia, UTEP at home, at Vanderbilt. So they got to play Bama and Georgia. Kentucky will be nasty with you. Vanderbilt will be nasty with you.
Yeah.
Like, they could lose 3 more games and be totally, totally out of it.
Let's move to the Big 12. One of the most fun conferences because there are so many contenders right now. Kansas State edges out Colorado in another great one, 31-28. Buffs were down 14 in the third quarter, but came all the way back to take a lead, 28-24. And that was even after Travis Hunter had to leave the game. That was after Horn had to leave the game. I think they lost some other guys throughout. But Shedeur Sanders put that team on his back. And under crazy amount of pressure every single play. He got sacked 6 times, but that doesn't even count the like a million hurries that he took in the game. He had 40 dropbacks, Sam, 34 completions.
And they had a pretty darn good offensive night, considering that their offensive line was nowhere to be found. I mean, they had 0.23 expected points added per play, almost 50% success rate, well over 7 yards per play. Like, they were doing a great job. They're a wild, wild football team.
Yeah, watching that game, K-State got the win. They had just a little bit more on that night. They scored on 3 plays with 2 minutes left, and that sealed it up. But I come away being impressed with Colorado because they have been better this year than they were a year ago, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And Sanders, I didn't know how much better he could get. He's better. And like, to lose those wideouts and still be throwing and getting yards and putting up all those numbers, it's pretty fantastic. And we had a conversation about top quarterbacks in the draft, Sam. He's near the top.
He's in there. I mean, the fact that he's doing this without a solid offensive line it's pretty special.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he's the first overall pick.
I know, which I thought really was nuts.
I really wouldn't because he has all the physical tools, and he has played in a very on field, a really difficult situation for him to put up the numbers that he has.
Just don't go to Carolina.
Dude, don't go to Cleveland. Like, his best bet is to go to the most mellow, out of the way. Like, if you went to the Titans, that would be
Deion's going to force him somewhere. It's going to be very Eli Manning-esque.
Like, yeah, man. Jeez. And I'm thinking like Titans, Steelers.
I mean, I'll take him. Well, I don't know. This is dangerous. Swap him out for Hurts right now.
Oh, goodness. Would you take I would take Shadur. I would take Cam Ward. I would maybe even take Quinn Ewers on a good day as the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns right now.
Okay. Like right now.
Like, literally, we are recording on a Tuesday night. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can take Carson back too, Sam.
You mean fly him up to Berea, get him in the film room, have him ready to go by Sunday?
Let's do it. Like the minor league baseball call-up, essentially.
Yep.
All right. Good W for the Wildcats. They moved to 5-1. Let's talk about Iowa State and BYU, the 2 teams that moved to 6-0. Our 2 picks as of last week to win the Big 12. Iowa went to West Virginia, got the W. I don't want to go too much into the game, but I thought West Virginia would cover. I didn't know if they would win, but Iowa State made pretty easy work of them.
Yeah, I mean, this team is just workmanlike in every way. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They play amazing defense. They went into a hostile environment there and just led from the start. Really, really good play by Iowa State. I would not be surprised if they go 12-0. Like, I've been high on Iowa State, but I look at their schedule. There is not a team left on their schedule that I think is better than they are. The 2 hardest games that they have are Kansas State, who they beat the crap out of last year in Manhattan, and Utah. And they do play at Utah, but we'll get to the Utes. They are not clicking right now on a few different ways. 12-0 Iowa State. Get ready to talk about it.
I don't see that, but they are a very good team. Their running back had 3 rush TDs in this game. Rocco Becht, 10 yards per attempt. I mean, it was an efficient game by them on the road. Very good win. BYU beat Arizona. They were at home in this one, were the Cougars, but it was also impressive. They really opened it up in the second half. Arizona turned it over 4 times, including a pick 6 at the end. That was a dangerous spot for BYU too. If you remember, the line was only 3.5, which was a little stinky. Yeah. And BYU moved down to
3.5 because I got it at 4.5.
Okay.
They kept dropping. Yeah.
And BYU said, F that. I don't want, it's BYU. So they weren't too mean about it. They didn't have too many curse words for them. But they said, screw your spread. We're going to whip your ass. And they did. And so we've got 3 teams at the top of the Big 12 at 3-0. BYU, Iowa State. What's the third team, Sam?
BYU, Iowa State. Would it be
3-0 in the conference.
3-0 in the Big 12. It's not Arizona State. Is it Texas Tech?
It is. It is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They start because they had 3 early games in conference play, and they were off this past week, I believe. So they are 3-0, but there's a bunch of one-loss teams, and there's only, if you go look at the standings, there's only like 3 or 4 teams that have eliminated themselves. Like everyone's still in play.
I think it is going to be really interesting down the stretch because it is a group of teams that we did not expect to be there, right? Texas Tech being one of them. Arizona State looking great. Already at 5 wins. Their win total was 4.5.
And you're on that, right?
Oh, it's already cashed.
No, it's cash.
It's cash, baby. We are in there. I'll tweet it out tonight. I got a cool video of Cam Scadaboo. They're awesome.
The Scadaboo video, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is incredible.
It is a work of art.
I don't know why I don't have that in my early part of the rundown, but we'll talk a little bit about Arizona State later. As I said at the top of the show, College Football Monday is brought to you by Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. You can see it right on your screen. The #1 cocktail in the world. I know when I got to school, you know, like 3 drinks, right? When you're just getting to your drinking age, you're like, rum and Coke.
Yep.
And Jack and Coke. But Jack is the one, that's an actual brand. Rum is just like whatever.
Rum and Coke is not something you drink that often past college. Jack and Coke you'll sip on as an adult and not look like a delinquent.
Exactly. And I also think rum is like, when I was coming up, I've got a few years on you, Sam, like Captain and Coke was a big deal, but Jack and Coke was the drink. And now they put it right in a can to make it super easy for you. I love it. It goes down great on a game day, especially if you have one of those early kickoffs. They just announced our Georgia Tech game is a noon kickoff, Sam.
Nooner. I actually don't hate it.
I mean, I don't hate any. I prefer 3:30. We've been over this, but it is what it is. Tecmo Bowl will be at noon. Well, guess what? At 10:30, crack open an ice cold Jack and Coke because that'll give you a little pep in your step, but you'll still get your buzz on. It is available at your local grocery and convenience stores. Go pick it up. They also make a Jack and Ginger. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke, ready to drink. As always, please drink responsibly. Before we get to ACC, can I talk quickly about my beer?
Yeah, of course.
This is the Pumpkin Smasher. Have you ever seen this one, Sam?
Yes, I have seen it. It's got Bigfoot on it, right?
Yeah, it's got Bigfoot on it. And I've seen this a lot of years, but I don't know if I've ever actually purchased it. So this year I went for it. It's called Big Muddy Brewing or Big Brewing. I don't know. Yeah, Big Muddy Brewing, Murfreesboro, Illinois, not Tennessee. It's really freaking good though. Like nice. I should have been buying this for a couple years because this one, it's got a really good spice level to it. Like, have you ever had the Atomic Pumpkin by the Voodoo Ranger? It's one of the new belts. It's got that heavy spice. Like it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's like a red hot, but it's almost got like that burn to it.
Yeah.
This is just like incredibly smooth, but really good flavor. 6% alcohol. So not too much, but enough to like really bring the flavor profile up, but not too sweet either. So this Big Muddy Brewing Pumpkin Smasher with the Bigfoot on the label, I recommend this thing. I'd probably give it a 4.0.
I'm a big fan of Bigfoot. I have a ton of Bigfoot stuff everywhere. So I'm all for it.
You're a big bison guy, big Bigfoot guy. You love the outdoors.
I do. I made a stop by REI today to resupply on some stuff, doing the Triple Crown next week before the Georgia Tech game.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, dude, you're heading to Blacksburg early, right?
Yeah, we're Sons of Saturday. We're doing some promo social media stuff with the basketball program. So
are we allowed to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We did it last year, so
yeah. We're the Slam Jam is taking place again. I think they put out a video on Twitter about it.
I think so.
But either way, the boys are going down. They're going to spend some time with the basketball team, and there's going to be some great content coming up on that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you guys heard on the Sons of Saturday feed. Me, Mike McDaniel, and Ed put out the first part of the season preview for basketball. Make sure you check that out. It was really fun. We kind of break down all the new additions. But yeah, that's that. But Sam's going to be down there. I know one of the guys on YouTube, one of our listeners, commented and was like, "Are you guys going to BC? I'd love to meet up." And I was like, "Send Sam a DM." So check your DMs at some point, Sam.
We'll do.
All right. ACC notes: Pitt beat Cal 17-15. We mentioned this a little earlier when we said Pitt is 6-0 now. This was a super weird game. Cal couldn't run. Pitt couldn't pass. Holstein, who I had praised a little bit on our podcast, was horrible. I mean, he was 50% completion for 133 yards, 2 picks, no touchdowns. Pitt was 1 of 12 on third down. I don't know how they won this game.
I don't either, man. Like, I really don't either. And this is just, I thought Pitt was going to be terrible this year. Obviously, with the addition of Eli Holstein opening up the offense, they are not terrible by any means. They're actually pretty good. But they have just come out on the right side of these weird, wacky games. And like, they have 2 really big comeback wins. They win kind of a shootout against UNC. And then here they are. Cal looks terrible. They somehow win this game after Holstein gives the ball to Cal a bunch of times. And Justin Wilcox, the Cal head football coach, absolutely butchered the end of this game.
Yeah, he is getting hate right now from the Cal fans.
We'll wait till we have our stock up, stock down.
Okay. Well, do you remember you said you thought Pitt was going to suck last year?
I thought
or this year rather.
This year. Yeah.
Do you remember the Pitt suggestion box that they put out when everything was going horrible last year? And it's like, oh my God, this program is cooked. Like they have a suggestion box, like went viral on Twitter, how stupid it was, all this stuff. And lo and behold, they're 6-0. I mean, I literally can't believe it.
They could be 3-3. Yeah. Like there is like, but they're not, because I think for the first time maybe in his career, Pat Narduzzi decided, hey, I'm not going to sabotage my own offense. I'm going to let them cook, do what I do best defensively. And yeah.
It's and I also noticed when I was trying to figure out like just how Cal, because I had the game on, but there were so many other games at that time. I couldn't like pay full attention to it. 12 penalties for the Bears and 2.2 missed 2-point conversions and the missed field goal with 1:50 left.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just
not good.
It was a terrible football game, but Pitt got the win. Clemson crushed Wake 49-14. Dabo pulled out the trick play to really just needle him.
Clemson is going to have a sneaky large amount of style points to the end of this year. If they don't win the ACC, they're going to have a good argument for being like the 6 or 7 seed. Yeah,
they will, but that Georgia loss was just so damning.
I know, but it's still long ago.
It is. And if Georgia wins all the rest of their games, then it is what it is. It won't look that bad. But if Georgia, there's a chance, and we'll talk about Georgia too when we get to our playoff picks. I'm not so sure Georgia's a lock for the playoff right now. Like they got to play a lot better. This is also a playoff question from Mitchie. Do you guys think Boise State can get a top 4 seed in the CFP? We talked a little bit about this last week because Bud Elliott did have them there a week ago. He has since dropped. It's possible.
It is. I think
it's gotten harder.
Yeah, you would need the Big 12 to absolutely implode. Yeah. Because right now they have 2 teams who look like they could win 10+ games at minimum. Like either BYU or Iowa State, excuse me, or Arizona State, who knows, are probably going to go 10-2, 11-1 and win the championship. And if that happens,
you're not putting
I think it would have to be
13-1 at this point.
Right. 12, like I think a Big 12 or ACC team would need to be a 9-3 champion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and I don't think it's not playing out like that right now, but who knows? It could all happen next week. I think honestly, if I'm Boise State, I'm thinking that they could be all the way up to like the 10 seed at this point. If they're just rolling through,
I don't think it's a lock that they're the 12. Like we mentioned that a little bit too. So if they win all the rest of their games, they're probably not the 12 seed. We did discuss the fact that maybe big college football doesn't want them to host. I don't know. I don't know if I buy into that or not.
Unless they were the 5 through 8 seed, they would not host.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's get to the rest of ACC because then our guest is going to hop on with us. Louisville beat UVA 24-20. Colandrea was responsible for 360 yards, 45 attempts though. for Calandria in the game. Just one touchdown. Malachi Fields did what he does, 129 yards and 14 catches. Tyler Shuck was not great. But Louisville just like they did enough to win. They're still just, I don't know what's going on with Louisville. It's not pretty.
They're blah. And I think defensively, they're not as locked down as they were last year. And that's what led to a lot of those blowout wins that Louisville had last year. This year, they don't seem to have that edge defensively. I'll be curious to see how Louisville finishes. And as for UVA, that's one where I think they're going to look back and be, darn, we should have won that game, because now they're going to have to really, really fight to get to bowl eligibility because their schedule's tough.
They had the lead for like a hot second in that game, right? Towards the end. Because I think Louisville was up most of the time.
Yes.
And then I think they grabbed
UVA got the lead.
Yeah.
Louisville got it and stopped UVA on 4th
Yeah.
down. Yep.
Syracuse beat NC State 24-17. Syracuse now 5-1 on the back of a great performance by Kyle McCord. Another one, 31 of 42 for 346 and 2 touchdowns for McCord.
NC State turned the ball over 3 times inside Syracuse's 30-yard line. If they would have just kicked field goals on 1st down, they would have won the game.
Yeah, they were moving for chunks of yardage. Bailey was really good for NC State in this game.
CJ Bailey is the next Jeff Sims. He has every tool, but the dude
I hope he's better
cannot
than
put
that.
together a whole drive. I don't know if he is. His accuracy is really bad. Like he's pretty inaccurate. NC State still has offensive line issues. Defensively, they aren't really good. And like NC State's thinking like bowl game, like military bowl. NC State.
If at best, like Bailey also led them in rushing with 28 yards because their O-line just can't.
They've never been able to run. They can't run. They don't have a ton of playmakers on offense except outside of Concepcion, and defensively they just look a little bit lost.
It was a nice win by the Orange. Don't get me wrong. Going down there, I
going
thought NC State would cover. I did, and they're just bad. I mean, NC State is just that bad. I'm not trying to take too much away from Syracuse, but
no, it's a good win for Syracuse. Like it's one that you think they kind of needed. Like that's one that you're kind of banking on beating. I can't believe I'm saying this, but one of the bottom feeder teams in the ACC this year.
It's crazy because they lost to the other bottom feeder team at home. Like the Syracuse loss to Stanford is becoming more and more inexplicable as every week goes by because Notre Dame spanked Stanford 49-7. And in the early part of that game, Stanford was playing really hard. Daniels was back. They were moving the ball a little bit. They were stuffing Notre Dame, but they just couldn't maintain it. And Notre Dame just went nuclear yet again. They have been playing so well. The only thing that I put Notre Dame in my playoff last week, only thing that I'm getting hung up on, Sam, is these injuries for Notre Dame.
Dude, it's bad. I mean, they are down. Starting cornerback is now down for the year. Their top cornerback. Left tackle's been out the whole year. Top edge rusher is out for the whole year. They have some offensive guys out. They're going to struggle down the stretch. Like they've played some cupcake teams. They get Army. I believe they get Navy as well. And they get USC. And I know we just saw USC leave, but traveling all the way to LA to play that offense, I don't want to do that without my best pass rusher and my best cover corner. Yeah. So Notre Dame has the tougher part of their schedule is ahead of them.
Yeah. It is, but it's also very manageable. Until USC, like, because that trip to LA, I don't care how USC's playing, like that's going to be a tough game. I think they can win it for sure, but I kind of forget that they have both the service academies on the schedule. Last game in the ACC, I can see our guest in the chat, so let's just finish this out and then we'll pop him in here. GT beat UNC 41-34. Haynes King only 127 pass yards, but he did have over 100 yards rushing and a very good QBR on the day. It's crazy that they scored 41 points, did the Yellow Jackets. He did not have a passing touchdown. Like, that is, like, bizarre.
Yeah, it is a little weird. Georgia Tech is a good running football team. I think they're going to lean on that for the rest of the season. Defensively, they are not good, though. Yeah. They are just as bad as they were last year.
371 yards rushing for Georgia Tech, 4 total rushing touchdowns. Both Jamal Haynes, who ended up with the long play at the end. So UNC actually tied this game up. And then Jamal Haynes had a 68-yard play that scored what happened to be the winning touchdown, which was the dagger with 16 seconds left. So great rushing day by the Yellow Jackets, but they're a flawed team for sure. And we get them in a couple weeks, and definitely a winnable game for the Hokies. So let's add our guest to the screen here.
Gentlemen,
we are welcoming in Billy Ray Mitchell. He is the co-founder and former offensive lineman for the Virginia Tech Hokies, founder of the Sons of Saturday. Didn't finish my thought there. Welcome, Bill.
How we doing? Just finished up our Boston College preview. A little bit of a wonky week. Didn't do a post-game wrap-up yesterday. Got to get the preview out early. It feels like we've been on a bye week for a month. So lots to talk about.
Yeah, lots to talk about because you were taking in, I don't want to say real football because we don't want to besmirch our Hokies or the ACC, but you went to one of the premier venues in college football. You were in Death Valley to watch LSU and Ole Miss. And I want to start, Bill, with just like, what did you get in the night before, and how was the night before and game day environment down there?
So I do want to address one thing. I addressed this on my other show. So my dad did play at Ole Miss. And I grew up in a middle-class family. Kidding. I grew up in an SEC family.
Worked at McDonald's.
And I caught some flack because I did wear purple and gold at this football game.
You probably caught flack from your father.
I did. But he did call me, and he said the same thing that I was thinking. Here's the deal. I went to this game, and after going to the Auburn game in 2019, it was my only other time in Death Valley. It was a day game, 3:30. They were throwing mason jars, glass mason jars, from the top of the stadium down into the bottom of the stadium in the student section. And I was just like, there's no way I'm showing up to this game wearing anything that will have any projectiles sent my way. Not going to do that. And also love the SEC. When in Rome, I did as the Romans did. And so that's that.
You were wearing the SEC. There was an SEC shirt. Is what
I had an SEC.
You went full Rob Lowe. You put the brand on.
I got to tell you, man, like, we're going to talk about the game in a second. It was unfathomably awesome. Like, I had sky high expectations. I was supposed to get in on Thursday. Flight got delayed. Ended up spending the night in Atlanta and then flew in. I stayed with my cousins who live in Baton Rouge. Whole family from my dad's side is from Louisiana. Dad almost went to LSU, but he said when I was getting recruited, the coaches were like, this guy's definitely coming to LSU. So he went to Ole Miss. But anyway, I don't even know where to start. Like, the tailgates themselves, everything is on such a large scale that you feel like you're at the most important thing going on within 1,000 miles of the stadium. Entire town is shut down, and we're walking through the tailgates. We went to this like Elrod's type place in the morning, which was great. Had brunch, went down for some of the tailgates. I'll just fast forward to the like stadium itself. Number one of the largest cultural differences are the songs that play. At Virginia Tech, I'm just speaking from our experience. We have one of the best experiences in the country. LSU fans were saying it. They said we went up to Virginia Tech. It was unbelievable. Awesome time. Great fans. They came down here. Number one, LSU's game day rotation is like Boosie. It's Drake. It's 50 Cent. We're listening to like the Hokey Pokey and like Shut Up and Dance. So number one,
Journey in there.
If I hear Shut Up and Dance one more time at a function,
can't happen anymore. So I'm just giving free notes here. And you had like kids like 8 years old screaming Boosie lyrics, which was an unbelievable sight. That's number one. Number two, it is deafeningly loud. Like, the only comparison that I can make is every third down, it's like you're hearing Coldplay for the first time. Your jaw is on the floor and you can't think, you can't move, you can't do it's the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. Like, I thought I've been to some great games. I went to UGA Notre Dame in 2019. I think it was the first time that they did like LED lights. That was super loud. Some Tech games, you'll look around and on like certain third downs, you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's really loud. It was every single third down to the point where, and we've seen Tech do this a couple of times, LSU won this game largely based upon their crowd. When they got into overtime, they had, I think, 2 or 3 false starts in a row to back them up, and then their field goal kicker knocks through a 60-yard. And I know I'm kind of all over the place. I could not get over the loudness of this stadium.
Yeah.
Fans are also very smart. I think a lot of people would just assume everybody's in like a drunken stupor and doesn't know what's going on. Everybody knows when to get loud. Everybody knows when to boo. Everybody knows what's kind of going on in the general feel there. Call in Baton Rouge. They played it twice. I put the video on my thing, and we've seen a lot of the Dixieland Delight at Alabama, which I have seen at night. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Call in Baton Rouge is unreal. They have the light show going on, everything else. Odell Beckham was there. And if Odell Beckham is there, they're playing Neck. They played Neck like 5 or 6 times. If you don't know what Neck is, look it up. And the entire stadium sings every single lyric. It was incredible. But I left that game thinking a couple of things. Number one, it was the best environment I've ever been to, ever, at a college football game. And I don't think it was particularly close. Number two, Whit Weeks is one of the best, is an unbelievable linebacker. Like I went into the game and my cousins were like, this guy Whit Weeks, you got to watch him. He's unbelievable. He's this white linebacker. Like he's a baller. He finished the game with 18 tackles, a sack, a pass deflection, and 2 TFLs. Like he was absolutely everywhere. Unbelievable player. And one of the things I caught a little heat for, and I'll rebound off of you guys because I know I've kind of just been going.
No, it says we want to hear about the experience.
Stream of consciousness.
You're on College Football Monday. We try to cover things from a national perspective, let people know what's going on. And on my bucket list, I said to Bill this week, like it is one of the very few places that I will go to before I die.
It was everything that I thought it would be times whatever number you want to say. The acoustics in the stadium, it's 102 or 103,000 people, but the acoustics in the stadium. So we were sitting on the end zone opposite of the band. So where it says, welcome to Death Valley, it felt like the band was playing in front of my face. Like they were 150, 120 yards away from me. It felt like they were playing directly into my face.
Wow.
That was incredible. Livy Dunn was there. Paul Skeens was there. Shaq was there.
Oh yeah, I saw Shaq creeping up on the sideline reporter. Yeah,
it is another thing that stood out. So you know how we do like the Hokies and the pros, and you show like, hey, Tremaine Edmonds had a couple tackles, Joey Sly had a nice field goal. Theirs is like a feature film's credits roll. Like it's like they can't show any highlights because they're like the Dolphins, 12 names, the Chargers, 8 names, the Giants, 5 names. Like it's like they go through every
Well, you think about the best receivers in the NFL, they're all LSU guys.
All LSU guys.
I
I think is a lot of people talk about the game day atmosphere and the tailgating and the noise and all that. And it's like, yeah, that is huge in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about like big time football, you're watching a program that has like created the best NFL players. Like if you go to LSU, it's not like, oh, this is like everyone's really excited. It's a great place. But it's like, I mean, just wide receivers like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, like Malik Neighbors
blowing up in year
Brian
one.
Thomas Jr. is out there. Like you're like, oh, this is the guys I'm watching are not just really good college football players. Like they're the next NFL stars. And that's 100%. To me is like the biggest difference between going to a night game at Tech and then what a night game at Bama or Georgia or LSU or Texas would be like.
And there's a reason, Bill, you said the thing about the volume. Like there's a reason they win. They're like 12-0 at night games or something. Like the numbers against the spread were
7-0 last year.
And
it's Brian Kelly has not lost a night game at LSU since he's been there.
And he came close. I mean, this game was about to break all of those numbers that I based my LSU pick on. But guess what? It didn't happen.
It was really interesting because it was really the football game itself. I got back from the game and I stayed up till 3 a.m. watching like the condensed game. because I was just I can't sleep. My head was ringing. I couldn't sleep. I
bet your ears were ringing after that. Yeah,
I went and got Cane's, and I probably ate like 12 chicken tenders, like 2 fry. I was just like drinking a Michelob Ultra, rewatching the game. It was a sloppy game, and a couple of things. Number one, if you would have told me LSU was going to rush for 84 yards, I'd be like, okay, probably not a great performance. And Ole Miss goes out, scores 17 points in the second quarter, and LSU just like did enough to stay in the football game. Ends up winning it in overtime, walk off. I have to tip my cap to Brian Kelly. He made changes on his defensive staff last year. And to come in there after the way that they lost to Ole Miss last year, I think the score is like 56-63 or like something
very
crazy.
High scoring game. Yep.
To come in and to win that game, and essentially a game that both teams had to win if they want to compete for a playoff spot, you kind of knocked Ole Miss out of the playoff because they still need to go play Georgia. LSU, they're going to have a tough schedule going on, but you kind of put yourself a little bit in the driver's seat. I was shocked to see that Ole Miss was favored in this game. LSU was coming off of a bye, but Brian Kelly, awesome job. It was really funny. Like, we're walking out of the stadium and people are like, well, Brian Kelly lives to coach another game. I'm like, dude, you're 5-1.
Are you crazy?
That multiple people were saying that. They're like, Brian Kelly, man, he bought himself another week.
The standard is just so freaking high. It's ridiculous because we know how good of a coach Brian Kelly is with his accomplishments at Notre Dame.
Top 8 coach in the country.
Without a doubt. I mean, my opinion of what he did at Notre Dame, like, I don't think it'll ever be matched in the modern era because of going undefeated in a regular season twice. Like, I just don't know if Marcus Freeman or anyone else can do that. So I know he's a great coach, and this win was pivotal. It really was a very important win. And going forward for Ole Miss, before we kind of loop back to LSU and close out, was Jackson Dart just wasn't great in this game. They needed him to play better. He had a 52 QBR, 24 of 42. I mean, he threw the ball 42 times, barely over 50%. It's a rough look. And at the end, I know Nussmeier didn't have a perfect game, but he put his nuts on the table at the end. I mean, that fourth down, how loud was the stadium when he threw that fourth down touchdown pass?
Well, first of all, I do want to say this about Jackson Dart. Number one, like, Juice Wells has been a complete non-factor this year for Ole Miss. That's number one. He was a complete non-factor in this football game against the secondary that I actually think is not up to like LSU standards. They may get there, but they're not there right now. That's number one. Number two, he said it in his post game. You cannot describe how loud it was. Like, first of all, LSU hates Ole Miss. Like, they're the same people. They really are, but they absolutely hate each other. It's an awesome rivalry. Ole Miss has not gone into LSU and won since I think 2008, 2007. It was back in like the Jevin Sneed, Houston Nutt era. It was deafeningly loud. Like, I would be watching. So we were sitting in the end zone so you could kind of see everybody. It was constant, like, offensive linemen looking next to him saying, what did we call Jackson Dart?
Your point is that you're forgiving Dart a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tough assignment, man. Like, to go in there against that team. They were celebrating 100 years at LSU, and it was one of those games, and we've seen this happen at Virginia Tech where the crowd literally willed their team to win. LSU did not play awesome. It wasn't a fantastic game from their quarterback. Their wide receivers dropped a ton of 50-50 balls.
I think Nussmeier was 22 of 50. Like, it was up until the end. He was really struggling.
He was. And I will say this too. The LSU receivers had a couple of 50-50 balls that they dropped. Ole Miss dropped a couple of gimmies in overtime and in the fourth quarter. But I walked away from that game saying LSU has a good football team. They have an unbelievable football team in front of that crowd. Like, the crowd completely willed them to that win.
It changes them.
And I was watching some videos, and you can't really get a sense for it on television. You can't even get a sense for it on a phone. Like, I was like, I wonder what this sounds like on the phone. It feels like your head's shaking. I'm really not trying to be like over the top here. You can't do anything.
That's nuts, man.
You can't do anything.
So looking at LSU's schedule, they get Bama at home too.
Mm-hmm. They get Bama at home. I'm surprised to see what time they play that game. They also
If it's
play
not
at
at night,
A&M.
it's a crime. It's got to be at night.
They also go to A&M. Another thing, when they call timeout with this LED thing, they turn all the lights off. Like anytime Ole Miss calls a timeout or there's a breakage in the quarter, all the lights go off. They make the stadium purple, and then they'll play a song that everybody's going to sing along to. Like they'll play Lil Wayne, and you could see some Ole Miss people in the huddle would just be like looking around as if they were completely.
It's distracting.
It's completely distracting.
Oh my God. So can you think of like in your time at Tech and all the visits you've made down there?
Yeah.
What would be what could we compare it to? Because I have a game in my head where like I think the 2016 Miami game was insanely loud.
Yeah,
that was the one that I was thinking about was 2016 Miami. You also think about some of the games where maybe the crowd wasn't. I can't remember how many people were at this game, but the UNC 6 overtime game, it wasn't even sold out, but everybody that was there cared a whole lot and made an impact on that game. I think back to 2017 Pittsburgh was extremely, extremely loud. And then last year, you look back at the Syracuse game on Thursday night where the team's playing really, really well. What shocked me again, and I'm probably coming off like a super LSU homer, and I have drank in there's no Kool-Aid left in Baton Rouge.
I mean, you made a fun. We've all visited universities and like fallen in love for a weekend. It's okay.
The difference was it wasn't loud during key moments, and it wasn't loud like when the team was playing well, because LSU played like crap for 3 quarters. They did. They weren't able to convert on third down, constantly giving up third and longs. Like there wasn't a whole lot to be excited about. And I had thought LSU lost the game like 3 or 4 times throughout the game. I was like, wow, what a great game. Sucks they're going to lose. It was the level of loudness and ravidness never stopped. It never gave in. It was never like Ole Miss would have a huge play, and then 3 plays later, they're staring third and long in the face and jumping off sides because of how loud it was. But if I had to answer your question, Pete, it's probably 2016 Miami. Just the crowd and the defense fed off of each other. And that is probably, in my experiences, some of the loudest at Tech. And Ohio State in 2014, honestly, or 2015.
2015, yeah. I was at that game. That was loud.
In the whole first half, the way that we were playing and the anticipation for that football game, that was an incredibly loud game as well.
And for the old heads out there, 2003 Miami, I don't think there's a louder game than I've ever attended. Now, a lot of people listening to this might not have been there or be too young for that, but it was when we stripped the ball from Roscoe Parrish, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like and that was still bar none my favorite game that I've attended at Tech. But I just kind of wanted to link our your experience to what we experienced at Virginia Tech. And hey, we've got a Thursday night game coming up. It's important. Yeah. Let's challenge our fans. I'm call to action here. Let's be loud on Thursday night, man.
It's going to be, I'm excited. We got a good crew calling it. We got Matt Barry and we have Dan Mullen. Sports Center is live from Virginia Tech.
How about that?
First. I didn't even know they were doing that.
They did that they did it at JMU last week because JMU had Thursday night. And I saw it. I'm like, wait, are they in Harrisonburg? And they're like, doing a little thing, him and Dan Mullen and whatever. So we're going to get that treatment right outside of D2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right outside of D2 in the Quillen Center or something. I never even heard of it.
They redid that plaza. So no one knows what the name of that place is. They completely redid that plaza like 2 years ago. And it's like it'll be a good setup spot for it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I Google Earthed it today because I was like, dude, I haven't been walked by D2 in years. What the heck are they doing?
A couple of other things, just observations about this Tech game this weekend. Tech season completely turned around after the bye week. Both of these teams are coming off the bye. It's a game we should win, and you have to go out and win.
You have to win.
We were talking about this on the preview podcast here a couple minutes ago. It's very interesting because whether you want to compete for an ACC title slot, which is a long shot, or you want to compete for a bowl game, this is one of the games that you have to win. Looking forward, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Clemson are our next 3 draws. Like, regardless of if you're trying to win 6 or you're trying to win all of them, like this one is pivotal because these next 3 games are going to determine what the Virginia Tech Hokies are remembered by in 2024. So got to find a way to win this game.
It was the Stanford game was, are we going full DEFCON or not? And we didn't go full DEFCON. We got to 500, got a good chance, very good chance at a bowl still. But this is close to that. A Thursday night game at home. I know you guys are doing some work with the basketball team the night before. I did a pod with Ryan Nanny, his new thing that's coming out on Thursday. It's about Virginia Tech and being a fan of that. So look for that in your feeds. I'll tweet that out. But like we have built up from a bunch of disappointing losses, some of which don't look as bad anymore. No, Vanderbilt.
Bama didn't take them to OT.
Right. Same. So there you go. But like we got better each year under Coach Pry. And this was the time of the season, as you said, Bill, where we started to play really good football a year ago. We need to do it again. Like this, I feel good about the odds of it. Our coaches, for as flawed as they may be, and not figuring ways to adjust or get the team maybe as prepped as they should be early in the year, later in the year, they've done a pretty good job of it in Pry's first 2 seasons. So I'm hoping it continues on Thursday night.
Can I just point something out here? And you guys probably already talked about it because I know you guys were going through the through the ACC. I just think it's so bizarre that for the amount of press that Cal has gotten this season, deservedly so, because they're a good football team, they're probably about to be 0-4 in the conference.
They've had a lot of things. I mean, their season is like ours. I mean, they had a referee influenced game against Miami.
Good wording.
They've lost some games they shouldn't have lost due to coaching errors, and we both have the same record. Like it's similar in nature.
I think they are at a point where they're going to be disappointed ending up exactly where people thought they were going to end up at that like 6-6 because of the energy that was around the program. I mean, Auburn is not very special this year. And then they beat San Diego State, who's not any good. And then they beat like Cal Davis.
And then they lost to Florida State
And they lost to Florida State. They butchered one against Pittsburgh. Like, I don't know how good this Cal team really is. I'm glad they had their moment in the spotlight. That was awesome. And I'm glad they took Miami to the brink because that was an awesome game. But if we're going like stock up, stock down, they're one of my stock downs is like,
I mean, they like us, they need to learn how to win.
Bottom half ACC. Yeah. I mean, a lot of teams are in that spot.
Bill, while we have you here, we have a couple other notable games. And the first one on the list was the Arizona State game and the Scattaboo performance. Can we talk about it? Because I know you guys mentioned him on your last week's show.
I love watching him play football. Like I'd never heard of him. And I watched the Mississippi State game, and it's like the late game. You know, I'm like, oh, this is on. I'll watch it. And he has that crazy person tick. Like that little, like
he shakes his head like he's had a concussion
a little bit. And his ability to, so one of the performances I really admired was one of his worst performances, which was against Texas State, where they completely keyed in on him. Like 100%, you're not running the ball. And he still had to, I think he only had like 60 or 80 yards rushing, but teams key in on him so much that it opens everything else up. I think, Sam, keep me accountable. Does Arizona State have like a freshman or sophomore quarterback? They have a young quarterback.
Oh, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore quarterback, Sam Levitt. Yeah.
He's pretty good.
He's pretty good, well, but he has the benefit of having a guy that everybody has to pay attention to. And I think that Sam Levitt has had the ability to grow as the season goes on, just because he's able to gain that confidence and it's opening things up for him. So I love watching him play. They go on the road. They beat Utah.
That run, like when he almost was down and then didn't go down. And then and there's a great video of it online. It's spectacular. I mean, really
one of the reasons I was high on them was because they played really hard last year. And that sounds like kind of lame, but they played really hard last year and they didn't have a lot of talent. They did a good job bringing guys into the portal. They kept the guys that they needed to keep. And now you're seeing the fruits of that. And I think Kenny Dillingham's he's a damn good football coach. He's going to, I don't really want to say sleeping giant, but we talked about this last week, Pete, like the Big 12 is up for grabs on who's going to be the better program. Yeah. Arizona State is right there, dude. They're right there.
They have the location that's favorable for some things. They have a giant school. It's a fun school. People want to go there. If you've ever look
Yeah.
at the co-eds, there's an attraction there. So they're 5-1. I mean, Arizona State's 5-1 after having a very tough couple years. And I agree with you, Sam. I think Dillingham's a fantastic coach. So
Their preseason over under was like 4.5, wasn't it? Have they already cashed their over?
yeah, Sam's been talking about that because he cashed it.
2
nice.
units in the
There you
bank.
go. Nice.
Yeah.
Forks up, go Devils. Let's go.
So the last couple notes I have here were just that Georgia sneaky kind of sucked against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's not very good. Georgia won by 10. Now, it wasn't that close if you look at the stats, but it's another one of these SEC teams who we believe to be almost a playoff lock. But I don't know. They all have to play each other as we kind of go down the stretch here. And you look at Vandy beating Kentucky and being a player, and Vandy beat Ole Miss, almost beat Georgia. No, before you signed on, Bill, we're saying like the only teams that you think are surefire wins for any SEC team right now are Mississippi State and Auburn, almost.
Yeah.
And when Auburn plays Bama, you know that's not a lock either.
What's really interesting to me, and I don't know if you guys have mentioned this yet, but all the teams that I think have a really good shot to win the Big Ten and to win the SEC are not like legacy teams in those conferences. Like Oregon is in the driver's seat to win the Big Ten. And Michigan fans hate that. Ohio State fans hate that. Like Penn State hates that. I don't like Penn State's odds going up against Oregon. I know they had a huge win against USC. USC is not very good. And if you look at the SEC, like LSU's come on a little bit, but Texas A&M, they're not a legacy SEC school. I think they have a really good shot to win the SEC. And I think Texas is head and shoulders above every other team.
Yeah,
I really do. Like
that's what we were saying. That was when Sam asked me basically like, who's the team that you think's favored for the title, and it's Texas right now. Like
doesn't matter who's playing quarterback.
Yeah,
doesn't matter anything else. They're so much more. I don't want to say they're so much more talented because a lot of these teams have a ton of talent, but they just look like a death machine as they roll through this. And again, they're gonna have to play some tough games. It's gonna be fun to learn. I actually bet against them against Oklahoma. They completely decimated Oklahoma. So
yeah, I was on OU plus 14.5 because of Red River, and it didn't play out that way. But anyway, the last couple things were just Iowa crushed Washington, Wisconsin crushed Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers looked real bad. I know they have a couple injuries, but that was a bad look.
Plays are starting to run out for Rutgers. Like
they're not a good team. We know they're not a good team.
They did in this like. Tech at the end of the season. Tech is going to look back and be like, man, how did we?
Well, and also we were lucky to even get that thing tied because we were down. I mean, we didn't play for 3 quarters, but I digress. Illinois beat Purdue just barely. That game went to overtime as well. So many overtime games this week, 50-49. Illinois survives. I felt bad for Purdue because they have been the worst power team by a lot. If you look at the metrics, and man, they gave Illinois a run for their money.
Man, what a weird year, man. I mean, Indiana tied for first place in the Big Ten. Illinois tied for second place in the Big Ten. Nebraska and Iowa are duking it out. Oregon is at the top. Like, is this the year that Penn State can beat a team named Michigan or Ohio State? It's going to be interesting.
The races for the conferences down the stretch are going to be real fun. And Sam and I are actually going to get to our playoff predictions in a little bit.
Can I ask a quick question just on that note? Hypothetically speaking, because tell me if I'm crazy. I think if Army or Navy, one of those two teams go undefeated, I think they have to get in over a Boise State.
I was going to ask Sam this question later, and so I'm glad you asked it. An 11-1, or I should say 12-1 Boise State with a championship, and then an undefeated Army or Navy with their conference championship.
It's really simple to me. If Army or Navy goes undefeated, Army or Navy will have probably beaten the other team twice, and they're going to be a very good program, and they will also have beaten Notre Dame. Yeah. So I would like you to find the score or the game that Boise State has to prove themselves more than an Army or Navy would if they went undefeated.
You don't, because the Notre Dame game is sitting there.
They're in.
And
I think they're in.
now it's a big if. It's a very big if.
I don't know if it is, man. The biggest if to me, honestly, is if they can both beat each other after playing 2 weeks in a row. Like that's the biggest if to me. I think
No, the biggest if is beating Notre Dame.
I don't know if it is. Dude, I'm not sure how good Notre Dame actually is.
They don't
They've
have to
been
beat
beating
each
the
other
shit out
back
of
to
people
back
lately.
So we got another confirmation. I don't think they have to beat each other back to back. I think it'll be decided before Army-Navy game.
So that's like an exhibition game?
Yeah, because it usually is. It usually doesn't count towards the record.
That's interesting. I thought they would have to like delay something.
I thought they would have to delay too, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess since they
I don't know.
already,
They're making up
if they were already
number
playing,
of teams and the rules. They're making that all up in the fly.
it seems kind of screwed up if they did play twice and then they split and then that keeps both of them out of the playoff. Like that does seem kind of screwed up.
Yeah. So I think if one of them goes, like, let's say, this is a go Army household. Let's say Army goes undefeated. They beat Navy. They win the AAC. Like they beat Navy in the AAC title game. They're 13-0. I think they're in.
They have to be in. I mean,
I think they're in at that point
be
because they have the Notre Dame win and they look good. And then Navy would maybe have a better case because they would have a really good win against Memphis and the win against Notre Dame and a win against a good Army team.
And don't forget that the Notre Dame game is also on a neutral site. So I'm not sure which one plays where, but one of them is played at Yankee Stadium and the other one is played. Where's the other one played? Army-Navy. I think it's played at like Landover.
It's at FedEx this year.
Or FedEx.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only way I could see Boise being selected over those is if Ashton Genty is like breaking Barry Sanders' record, and there's that whole storyline, and they just crush UNLV.
It would be
twice.
BS, Sam, because
it would be BS. But that's
Mitch
how
has
this
also pointed out
selection
something I was
process
thinking
goes.
of here is that because Notre Dame beat Texas A&M, if they get propped up and they end up like being in contention for the playoff, and you've got Notre Dame with a win over them and Army or Navy undefeated with a win over Notre Dame, like that succession line has to play out into the playoff.
Mm-hmm. LSU has to go to Texas A&M and play them. I have a futures bet. My two futures that I'm very excited about. I have Travis Hunter to win the Heisman Trophy. I don't think he will because it's a quarterback award and it's unfortunate. He's obviously the best player in college.
And he got hurt last game too.
So I have that one, but I also have Texas A&M to make the college football playoff. Which
hey, while we're doing this, let's just do it now since we got Bill here. I'll add Sam's playoff picks to the screen, and you'll notice he does have Texas A&M in his playoff right now. Sam has Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. From the ACC, Clemson and Miami. From the Big 12, Sam has two teams, and this is part of his change this week. Iowa State and BYU both in. I have not seen many people prognosticate two Big 12 teams getting in, and you have Boise State.
And my thing is, I think Notre Dame is going to fall. I don't like they have too many injuries right now. I think they're going to fall at some point. And with their strength of schedule, I just don't know. I think it's going to come back to bite them in the butt. I think BYU and Iowa State are both double-digit win teams in the regular season. And I'm putting them over a 9-3 SEC team or a 10-2 Big Ten. Like, I just think they're going to have too many wins at the end of the day, and that will trump any other resume builder.
I gotta be honest with you, Sam. I don't even know if Notre Dame goes undefeated if I would put them in the playoff. I really don't. Like,
come on, man. I don't. They're beating the two teams you just said you'd put in if they beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, but the way that it works out is it basically comes down to how much SEC Big Ten bias is there versus how much bias is there towards Notre Dame. And I don't think that you can watch Notre Dame and think that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country.
I don't think you've been watching them for the last 3 weeks. 4 weeks, dude. They've
been
kicking,
a call out.
They've been kicking ass.
That is true. That is true.
And I mean, who they've been kicking?
They've also played some teams.
They beat the shit out of Purdue, who almost beat a ranked Illinois. I mean, I understand teams play better on some weeks than not, but like to crush Stanford the way they did, they're not just beating these teams; they're embarrassing them. And I was the biggest Notre Dame hater after they lost at NIU. It was a terrible loss. I didn't have them in my playoff until last week. But that A&M win is a gem. Like that is a really good win.
Well, it's if LSU beats A&M, then I think it is. I think A&M's probably out of it because they're probably not going to win out. And then I think Notre Dame, their best resume booster, gets
but
kicked.
you say
NIU
that
is bad.
You say that full well having A&M in your playoff, though. So
No, I know.
By this logic, Notre Dame should almost be in your playoff, Sam.
Yeah. I just
and I'll go to mine because that's what I have A&M and Notre Dame in, because I think A&M's going to play really well down the stretch. I think Notre Dame has the edge over them. They might lose one more game, but even a 10-2 Notre Dame with an A&M win and wins over maybe both like 10-win service academies, that's nothing to sneeze at, along with all of their other wins and a USC win, which no matter what you want to say about USC, going to LA and winning is not going to be easy. So they're not going to leave out a 10-2 Notre Dame. And they're definitely not going to leave out an 11-1 Notre Dame.
I'd like to sneeze at two things.
Okay.
Alabama has serious problems on defense.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Serious.
I mean,
issues.
the SEC right now, Bill, it is like, because I took Tennessee out to put A&M in, but like Georgia could come out. Bama
I was about to say you could replace you could have replaced A&M with Georgia or Alabama, and you could have left Tennessee in and taken one of those two teams out. It's kind of crazy over there. I'm very interested to see the gymnastics that might happen here to get 3 or 4 teams still in. You might see a 3 or I don't think you'll see a 4-loss SEC team, but you might see a 3-loss SEC team make the playoff.
I think you will.
What I also want to bring up is I'm very interested to see if Clemson does win out, how high of a seed they would be. Like if Clemson wins out and you have a bunch of like just cannibalism at the top of the SEC, right? Could Clemson climb to be as high as a 2 seed after that week 1 loss?
I think so, because they're going to have a lot of style points. I mean, they're beating teams by 30 plus. And
if it was up to you guys right now, like, do you think a Clemson and Miami game is that close? Like,
if they're playing and the line is, if Clemson's favored by 4 or 5 points, I'm taking Clemson and laying the points. Like I think Clemson would outclass Miami. I realize that's how I feel.
I do too.
That's just how I feel. I don't think it matters where the game's played. If they played each other right now, I would take Clemson. I think Dabo has this thing, and he has his team bought in on this whole like nobody believes in us thing. He has not been able to lean into the like little old Clemson thing, and I think that it's actually almost became a little bit true. Coming off of what everybody was saying about Clemson, and he can't adjust and everything else. I've said it since the beginning of the year. I think he's on like this redemption tour, and I will be rooting for it every single game that we don't play them.
So Mike Holmes just put this in the chat. Riley Leonard is not a playoff QB. And I am guilty of thinking that at some points this year. But I want to ask you, like, is Connor Wegman a playoff QB? Is Drew Aller a playoff QB? There's a lot of, especially is Nico a playoff QB. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are flawed. And I think with the experience and with how well he's playing now, like he had a tremendous game. I know it's Stanford, but Stanford defends the run well. That's the one thing they do well. And the one thing Riley Leonard does well is run the football. And guess what? In that game, he passed the football and he passed it really well. And so I know Notre Dame has injuries, but the schedule's favorable. And I think that A&M win is just going to it's going to age like a fine wine. So my other picks for the people who are listening and not watching, I have BYU as my Big 12 champ, just one team from there. I also have Boise like Sam, ACC, 2 teams, Clemson and Miami, both getting in. And the Big 10, it hasn't changed. It's Ohio State, it's Oregon, it's Penn State. Penn State, I'm not saying they're a lock at this point because they could lose just about any game, but like they have a very nice setup now going through the end of the season.
And I'll tell you what, so does Oregon. Because that trip to Ann Arbor to play Michigan and that trip to Madison to play Wisconsin does not look too daunting at this moment.
To Coach Holmes' point, and I got to go, my computer's going to die. I don't think there's no elite class of quarterback this year. It's very interesting. I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen this year, I hope it doesn't. I hope it's Travis Hunter, or I hope it's Achane, or I hope it's somebody else. But I think they're just going to award the Heisman to a really good team and their quarterback. But I don't see a quarterback who you're like, okay, he's going to carry this team to the finish line. I think every quarterback is incredibly flawed. I think every quarterback is got a lot of weapons around him, but there's not like that, RG3 type story that you had when he won the Heisman or Tim Tebow. Like, it's just kind of an assembly of a bunch of quarterbacks who are like hitmen on a team of like really talented players.
Yeah,
and one of them will win the Heisman just because their team is really good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's funny you say that because I named 3 quarterbacks that I want to fly to Berea, Ohio today and play quarterback for the Browns. So that's funny. I think Cam Ward is probably the only quarterback out there who could have those like Heisman moments and carry his, like if Cam Ward stops the oopsie daisy stuff,
yeah,
Miami is national title caliber. The issue is for 4 years plus, Cam Ward has been nothing but oopsie daisies.
Yeah.
I think this will work out though, because next week we have Alabama, Tennessee. I think that is a de facto playoff game.
It very well could be.
It very well could be.
But if you're talking about quarterbacks to me right now, just to finish that point, it's Gabriel to me is, as a college quarterback, he has come up clutch several times in several big games, Dylan Gabriel. And Milroe. I mean, Alabama's problems are largely on defense. I think Milroe, to say that he's not above a lot of other ones would be wrong. I agree with Sam about Ward and Shador. I know they're not really being talked about as a playoff team, and now they have the 2 losses, but like he is playing outstanding.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm going to drop off. You guys do an awesome job on this.
Thank you for coming on, dude.
Love checking it out. And hopefully we can do it again soon. Appreciate you guys.
Later.
Yep. See you, Bill Ray.
All right. So you were finishing a point, Sam. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I was saying, I have Alabama, Tennessee next week. Week after, we have LSU, Texas A&M. Those are both, in my mind, de facto playoff games because the loser of that game would have to win out and have the chips fall their way.
Yeah.
Because they would both be at 2 losses and both have tough schedules ahead because all 4 of those teams have tough schedules ahead.
It's just crazy because you opened the door with that 9-3 thing, which I think is absolutely true.
I think in the 9-3 thing most years, but I think there are going to be too many double-digit win teams from power conferences.
The games this weekend are good. Mike Holmes just pointed out Texas and Georgia is this week. We will go over the games briefly at the end. Let's get to G5 rundown real quick, Sam. Boise beat Hawaii. Genty went for 217. JMU whipped Coastal. That was an impressive win. Nevada beat Oregon State. Really good win.
Good win for Nevada. Oregon State is a good team, but you saw the lack of depth in that game.
Washington State beat Fresno to move to 5-1. That's an interesting storyline as we kind of go through the season. Washington State playing well. So the best G5 teams, I still think it's Boise. We had this conversation last week. Army may have moved ahead of Navy. In the Massey composite, they are ahead of Navy, JMU, and Tulane, and UNLV. So it's Boise and then Army.
UNLV doesn't have a defense. They have good defensive players, but they don't want to play defense for a whole game. So I'm out on them. I think Boise's going to crush them. And UNLV is probably going to drop a random Mountain West game here. From what I have seen, I like Army's defense a whole lot. Give me Army over Navy, but also this is a Go Army household.
Yep.
So there's that. Both those teams are very good.
They are.
Tulane is the sneaky one here. Tulane and Memphis are the sneaky ones because Tulane is crushing teams and they have 2 really big losses. Memphis only has that 1 loss, and it was to Navy. If Memphis will probably go 11-1.
Yeah, and Memphis and Tulane, they have more talent than the service academies. Like that's undeniable.
It is. The American is going to be crazy.
It doesn't I know Memphis already lost to them, but those teams as the year progresses, it's going to get harder for the service academies to maintain. And if Tulane steps up or Memphis steps up and wins the conference, because they're going to get a shot again in the title game against Navy, perhaps if it was Navy and Memphis. So
I mean, they'll all win this week probably, and then I'm pulling up the schedule for Week 9 in the American right now, and oh gosh, I hate how they reset the filters.
Another team to look out for, Sam, Louisiana in the Sun Belt. They're
sneaky.
They're having a nice year. They just beat App. App is now 0-3 in the Sun Belt, man.
I just don't see
they're falling apart. No one's talking about Liberty either, but I don't care about Liberty.
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it is. I don't see any of those 4 teams losing for a while. Like we're getting into like mid-November until those teams either play each other or play another good team.
All right, let's do
So,
a quick break. Then we'll do stock up, stock down, and we'll leave you guys alone and we'll cut it off. But College Football Monday is brought to you by Roback. You guys know Roback, the performance active wear designed for those who crave activity. You can get the Commonwealth polo in both colors. That's the little tiny Virginias all over one of the best looking polos that's out there. You'll see tons of them in Blacksburg, but they're great. Use code 2DVT to get 20% off your order at Roback. You can get the Commonwealth, you can get the VT, you can get the game day, you can get the quarter zip with the VT logo, the hoodie with the TV logo. These new releases that came out at the end of the summer, they're all there. They also have women's stuff, joggers, the little dresses, quarter zips, and of course, all the polos and tons of designs. So use our code 2DVT to get 20% off your order. If you've already used it, use your wife's email, use your significant other's email, mom, dad, whatever. Get someone else to buy it for you. Whatever it takes, get that 20% off. And remember that Roback, if you're wearing it, you crave activity. All right, Sam, stock up, stock down. Give me your stock down teams first.
first stock down Utah. The machine is broken. They have been a machine of a program, and the quarterback thing has messed with them. Cam Rising is out for the year for sure. Done.
Oh wait, I saw something about might be seeking it another year.
He
I thought that
technically
was a
could.
joke.
He's technically could medical redshirt this year.
Oh my god.
They need to move on. They'll probably they
You can't go through this
self-sabotaged
again.
themselves.
Yeah.
They did. Cal. The Cal algorithm can't win you football games. That is an issue. And I think Cal is going to have to. Justin Wilcox has been there like 7 years.
Yeah.
They got to win these football games. This is the most talented team they've had in a while. And then Maryland. Holy crap. Maryland got crushed on Friday night to Northwestern at home.
That's a good
and
pick
no
for
one was
stock
paying
down.
attention. That is going to be an interesting job opening because I don't see Loxley keeping that job. And that is one of the definitely not premier Big Ten jobs, but because of their location and because of the Under Armour contract they have some product differentiators, as we'd call it in the biz. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting job opening at Maryland.
And you're also going to get rich if you become the Maryland head coach. You can't. It's like South Carolina. Like you're not going to win there, but you can pull some recruits, and you're going to get filthy, stinking rich. So there will be guys that want that job.
Yeah.
All right. So my stock down was Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
I was disappointed. They were in control of that game most of the time. And Billy just described the environment, but that was their playoff chances going out the door because they will not have the schedule strength, even at 10-2, I think, to get in.
Done.
Tennessee, stock down.
Yeah.
I know there's still one loss, but 2 weeks in a row, haven't looked very good. I don't know what happened to the offense. They're one-dimensional pretty much, and teams are figuring that out. Tennessee stock down. USC, you had the game. That could have been a season-saving win. You could have won the Penn State game, gone on a run, beaten Notre Dame, and made the playoff.
And that
Now
LSU win would have looked really good.
USC got the same record as the Hokies. I'm sorry. Stock
Damn,
down.
they just like us for real.
Stock up, Sam. What you got?
Oregon, obviously. I think they move into the natty favorite. I think they feel pretty good about getting to Indianapolis for the Big Ten title. They're a national champion caliber team. LSU, back in the college football playoff discussion. They will probably be on one of our graphics next week. They're back. And if their loss right now is a neutral site loss all the way in Vegas in a close game. So LSU back in it.
Yeah, the LSU fans are probably mad that they weren't in either of our graphics for the playoff, but I just think they have a tough schedule, and they barely won that game at home.
LSU and Tennessee are bubblicious. They're very bubblicious teams. And then my third, Penn State, because they just keep stacking W's while everyone else around them is losing.
I had Penn State stock up as well. I had Arizona State as one of my stock up teams.
Absolutely.
Because I kept thinking, I liked them in the spot against Utah, and they lived up to it. but they still surprised me. Even though I picked it, I still thought that was a very surprising, well played game. So stock up, and then LSU I also had stock up, but that goes without saying. So that's about it. I could complain a little bit about Penn State being 3 in the AP poll ahead of Ohio State, who I think most people would think is better. Am I crazy, Sam? Like that just seems so silly
I
to
mean,
me.
I think you watched I think right now I'm going Texas, Oregon, Ohio State as my top 3.
Yeah.
By the way, just think about it.
Right.
Texas versus Oregon in the Natty. That uniform game would be wow. Oh, that would be so good.
So
that would
Oregon,
be so good.
Oregon has played Ohio State in the national title game. Pretty good uniform matchup. And they played Auburn. Not as good of a uniform matchup, but you did get a dichotomy of colors, and that was cool too. But you're right. Texas and Oregon would be pretty sweet in a matchup. I don't know if I've seen that in my life.
Digging deep right now, a Holiday Bowl somewhere?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
All right, so week 8 games, Miami at Louisville, huge game. Louisville 4-point underdogs at home.
I haven't done my bets yet.
Yeah. I mean, we're not really picking them. I'm just mentioning them. Georgia at Texas, massive game. Cannot wait to see what happens in this. Texas coming down off Red River.
Points.
Maybe Georgia was looking ahead to Texas. I think they probably were, and that's why they struggled against Mississippi State. So Texas 3.5-point favorites in that one. Bama at Tennessee, just another awesome, huge game. Tennessee 2.5-point underdogs in Knoxville.
Okay.
If Nico can't get off the mat and throw some passes against this secondary, he might not be the guy. Nebraska at Indiana, fascinating game.
Not a pretty uniform game.
No,
but a massive game for the Big Ten.
Yeah, Indiana 6.5-point favorites. Michigan and Illinois 3.5-point underdogs at home.
Gross game.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why Michigan would be favored, but that's okay. LSU at Arkansas 3.5-point underdogs at home. That's a dangerous spot for LSU, man.
And that's a nasty rivalry too.
It is. And Arkansas is decent. We talked about how they have a chance of being undefeated right now. And so they've had some bad luck, but man, Arkansas could take LSU down. That's one of the reasons I didn't have LSU, because I just don't even trust them this week. Yeah. And then K-State at West Virginia. Test spot for K-State. It hasn't been so tough to get wins at West Virginia this year. Penn State did it. We just saw Iowa State do it, but it's still a test.
Yeah, those one score wins for West Virginia last year are looking a bit like anomalies.
That is going to do it for the podcast. Sam, thank you for being here. Billy, thank you for coming on. It was a lot of fun. For all you guys that hopped in the chat and said stuff, Thomas, Mitchie, Mike, etc., thank you. Much appreciated. Make sure you're subscribed. Sons of Saturday on YouTube, on the feed, pod feed, both Too Deep and Sons of Saturday, and enjoy the game on Thursday, Sam.
Heck yeah. We'll be bundled up. Should be great fall weather. Excited to watch the Hokies.
Yes, sir. And until next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.